The Young and the Restless airs today with Nate confronting Audra about planting notions in Elena's brain, Summer worrying about her mother's mood swings, and Jack and Diane finally coming home. While in need of locating Nate, Victoria visits the Newman Media headquarters. As Audra arrives, she says that Nate has disappeared for a romantic getaway with Elena. She always gushes about how wonderful Nate is and how fortunate Elena is to have him. Clearly, Victoria is not impressed. Victoria, at her desk, consults Audra on the call, inquiring as to the latter's potential future steps. When Audra doesn't get the response he expects, he either becomes furious or gives up. He's easily distracted and could move on from Devon because of his short attention span. Audra calls her to compliment her on her laser-like focus, and after the call she expresses her admiration. She also respects her for interfering with the personal relationships of others. According to Victoria, the fault does not lie with the one who manages to convince someone, but rather with the weak link in the chain. To Audra, it sounds like she's talking about Devon and Tucker. With a direct question, Victoria asks, "How else could you be understanding my statement?" before leaving. At the Grand Phoenix Hotel lobby, Nate and Elena have a... In no way is Elena suggesting that he lie to her, but she does require him to tell it as it is. Nate reassures her it's business as usual, but he doesn't see the need in repeating themselves. Elena apologizes, but he says she shouldn't bother. She argues that it's not like he and Victoria are having an affair, and that she doesn't want to go back to the bad times they had previously. Nate reassures Elena that despite his many business relationships, he loves her more than anyone else in the world. They engage in a passionate kiss after discussing the merits of cuddling. Stark learns that once she commits wholeheartedly. She agrees that his proposal has merit, but points out that they'll need Jack and Diane to return to town for it to be implemented. It's evident that Phyllis won't stand for her loved ones being exploited as bargaining chips. They need Diane and Jack to believe the threat has been neutralized. They'll treat them the same way they treated him, only worse. All My Children's Bianca Eden Rebel reflects on the past and the future. Kyle discovers Summer chilling out by herself on the Crimson Lights patio. She puts on a fake smile while he ponders her apparent anxiety. There's a lot going on, but he's certain they'll figure it out. She is attempting to maintain an optimistic outlook, but she hasn't even told him about her recent argument with her mother. It made her uncomfortable. Phyllis's fixation on Diane appears unbreakable. She was being really nosy with her queries. The two people, Summer assures Kyle, must remain vigilant. Phyllis, out of breath from her sprint, comes in to tell Kyle and Summer that Stark has taken a plane to France in search of Jack and Diane. Kyle is confused as to how she has such intimate knowledge. Phyllis, who insists she is being completely forthright, reveals that Stark has been fixated on her and constantly badgering her for assistance. She didn't want to risk people not believing her, so she kept quiet. Nonetheless, Stark currently represents a genuine and significant risk. Before he can make a call, Kyle realizes he has forgotten his phone. He receives it from Phyllis and walks away. For 20 minutes, Jack observes Diane at the Abbott cabin, staring at the same page. She freely admits that she is preoccupied with many thoughts. Even though they're taking it easy, a storm is on the way to their hometown. He pours them a glass of wine while she says that a disturbing phone call had just come in on the landline. Assuming Stark has located them, she becomes concerned. At incorrect number, Jack informs us. She's worried that if he finds out they're there, their loved ones will be in the line of fire. Jack claims he would return in a heartbeat if he had reason to believe his loved ones back home were in danger. Kyle has just called and learned that Stark has chartered an aircraft to Paris. Jack discusses the situation to Diane and worries if they've fallen into a trap. In response to her request, he recommends they return home. She says, "What will they say about this?" as she looks down at her ring. Jack is eager for them to make the announcement public. They share a passionate kiss. During their return to Crimson Lights, Phyllis reassures Summer that she will always come first. Her kid keeps pointing out how she's always given her a reason to doubt her. She'd rather remain without her, despite her absence, than be let down by her again. In the aftermath of Phyllis' departure, Kyle comes back to reassure Summer that his parents are on their way. As her mother previously possessed his phone, she has reason to be wary of him. Not to mention, there isn't much logic to this rushing off to Paris business. She thinks her mom might be helping Stark set a trap. He's given that some thought too. Even so, his folks were on their way back. He assures her that they are maintaining a high level of security. Victoria, who assumed Elena and Nate were out on a date, runs into Elena. Elena claims she's too drained from work to do anything than relax with a cup of tea. Victoria requests that she put the meal on her tab and expresses gratitude for allowing Nate to work so many late shifts with her. During a conversation with Elena, she gushes about how well the two of them mesh. It's almost as though he were destined for this position. She thinks he has a bright future ahead of him if he keeps this up. She must be very proud of him, Victoria thinks. She thinks he's evolved into a formidable businessman. After Victoria bids her goodnight, Elena contemplates the events of the day. When Nate enters the room, he lectures Audra on the dangers of feeding Elena false information about Victoria. She insists she has done nothing wrong and apologizes if there was any confusion. When Elena inquired as to how things were doing at the office, she described how perfectly in sync everyone was. Her interactions with others were always strictly business. After leaving Nate alone, Elena returns with a cup of coffee. She couldn't go to sleep until she apologized for her outburst earlier. Otherwise, she'd keep having bad dreams about it. She worries they'll return to their old combative ways. Even though he seems content right now, he still has to face the fact that work is demanding no matter how joyful one is. She wants to be there for him and is proud of him, but she also sees him struggling as he adapts to the commercial world. Nate emphasizes that he has not evolved. The thought of losing him continues to haunt her. Forever, he assures her, they will be together. He is dedicated to their future success. Victoria contacts him and asks if they can have a drink to talk about the McCall purchase. He offers his apologies, explaining that he is currently with Elena and would appreciate it if the matter could be addressed in the morning. There's a grin on Elena's face. Victoria looks downcast as she sits at Crimson Lights by herself after she and Nate had gotten off the line. After some time apart, Jack and Diane have returned to the Abbott home. On the way back, he heard how quiet she had become. As for her thoughts on their upcoming nuptials, she says she's been thinking about it. She understands his want to share the news with the world, but she argues that they should be cautious and tactful. Kyle may need some time to adjust. Even if it's right for them, that doesn't imply he'll agree with it. Jack is confident that their son will soon come around, at which point they will be able to proclaim it from the rooftops. Diane continues to fret about the extent to which it will bother some. He recommended they just tell close relatives at this time. They kiss after she says she agrees. Diane is disappointed that she can't flaunt her new ring. Summer and Kyle have arrived. Specifically, they discuss how they feel now that Stark is no longer around. In Kyle's opinion, this is merely a momentary setback. After reassuring everyone that they will work through it as a unit, Jack and Diane make their engagement announcement. Summer and Kyle both stare at him in shock. After finishing up, Phyllis rushes to Stark's room to give him the good news. In his opinion, recruiting her was a stroke of genius. Now what? She says to the genius. They need access to Diane's property, which means she'll have to re-enter the Abbott house, which Jeremy anticipates would be the most challenging step yet. If Phyllis declines, he'll have an associate perform as Speedy B, and Phyllis is willing to do everything it takes to keep her family safe. Therefore, she will do what he asks. Stark explains that he needs just 1 or 2 pieces of Diane's personal property, and that they need to be uniquely hers. Clearly, they are Diane's possessions and nobody else's.